Monopolies have a single seller, no close substitutes. They're a price maker. They can control prices. No one can enter. And there's a lot of non-price competition, usually through advertising the product. So examples of monopolies include natural gas, electric, water, and they're run by the government because people need those. So the government owns them. And then near monopolies, Intel and Whammo, and then professional sports teams. So monopoly, strong barriers to entry effectively block all potential competition. Factors that keep firms from entering an industry, including economies of scale, legal barriers, patents and licenses, ownership of essential resources, pricing. So monopoly, there's a lot of economies of scale, which means that they can produce more and more, and then the cost goes down, and the monopoly keeps going because of patents. So they have patent protection, and no one else can make their product, or resource ownership. So they have ownership of a certain resource like oil, so they can just keep monopolizing something. And then the government doesn't regulate it. That can allow for monopoly. And then the firm is a single price monopolist, charges the same price for all units of output. And then the crucial difference between a monopolist and seller in a perfect competition lies in the demand side of the market. So the monopolist industry, demand curve is the market demand curve, marginal revenue is less than price. So in this case, this is where the monopoly is. This is usually monopolies are when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. In this case, this is the closest we get. So marginal revenue equals marginal cost in a monopoly, therefore causing maximum profits. Here it is closer than the rest. So marginal revenue does not equal marginal cost, but here we are trying to get as close as possible to them equaling, because none of them equal in the chart. So if you're going to be an accountant, you could figure out when marginal revenue is close to marginal cost and then tell the business to operate at that quantity. So in this case, you would operate at 5 quantity, so sell 5. So like sell 5 for a quantity to maximize profits. You could start a business analyzing accounting statements and figuring out when figure out where firms should operate to maximize profits. The steps for graphically determining profit, maximizing price and economic profit, determine where our marginal revenue equals marginal cost, determine the profit maximizing price by extending a vertical line upward from the output, determine the pure monopolist economic profit by using one of two methods. So just find profit through finding the difference between the price per unit and cost per unit, or doing total revenue minus total cost. So you can do one of those ways. And this is where profit is maximized, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So this is profit maximization. So under monopoly, consumer surplus is less. Consumer surplus and producer surplus is less because they don't produce as much as they should in an efficient economy. If we had perfect competition, we would produce exactly what we need. But the problem is in monopoly, we don't produce as much as we should. We produce less. So there's going to be a loss to that, to our economy. And the loss is this triangle. So this triangle right here, is a loss because we produce too little. And this is all we lose. Everyone loses from that. Us, companies, the whole economy. So to get rid of monopolies, there are ways to do this through the anti-combine laws being changed, regulate prices and operations of natural monopolies, and ignore monopolies which are unsustainable in the long run. So it's good to, one of the things that we can do to eliminate monopolies is to create foreign competition. So bringing in companies like Bayer from Germany for chemicals. We can create competition in the chemical industry. Daimler from Germany. We can create competition in the automobile industry. Michelin from France for tires to create competition. Lenovo from China for electronics, and so on. So bringing in foreign competition can allow for us to have better, to eliminate monopolies. And then price discrimination is when everyone gets a different price. So they figure out what everyone's willing to pay for it through a lot of the time through their data. So they use the data from the internet to figure out how much someone values something for, and then they sell it to them for that price. So they create different prices for different people. So they do this through business class airline tickets. Business class gets a higher price for it because they value it more than for economy. So economy, they value it less, so they get a lower price. So that's what they do for price discrimination. This is a way to make the most money. They can do this through collecting online data, but it's very hard to do. They need to have a lot of data on people to do this. And then, so monopoly power, price discrimination can be done through monopoly power. They can control output and price. Market segregation. So segregate buyers in different distinct classes. So business class and economy for airlines. No resale. The original purchaser cannot resell the product or service. So airlines do this. Yeah. High fares for traveling executives. So because they need travel, while low fares for people like us going to Florida, because we don't need to fly, so we're gonna get low fares. And higher rates in the evening and on weekends when demand is strong for theaters and golf courses. So they set prices differently to make more money in different times of day. Then coupons, people that are low income use coupons. People who are high income don't use coupons. International trade, it depends on country. Yeah, big data, like I said, they use online price discrimination through big data. So they collect big data and then they figure out who values something low at a low value, who values something at a high value, and they set prices based on that. So I'm going to go through some monopolies. So Google is a monopoly in search. There's other search browsers like Bing, but Google has definitely most of the market share, and they are they don't have a lot of competition. Microsoft in the 90s, what they were doing with their internet browser, Internet Explorer, was they were installing it into Windows, and they made other browsers like Mosaic not work in Windows. and this was very anti-competitive because they wanted to create monopoly uh, on their browser, and they had to go to trial for antitrust in the United States for that. So that was a big issue with Microsoft. They tried to monopolize their browser, and they had a lot of issues with that with the U.S. government. Hydro One, they own 97% of the power infrastructure in Ontario, and they effectively control the whole power infrastructure in Ontario. And they were they were in a good situation because they were owned by the government at one point, and the government could set the prices low because they're not they're not focused on profits. But then they sold off a lot of it, and now a lot of it's privately owned, and now they're starting to set prices higher because they want to maximize profits. And then the TTC is it's a publicly owned monopoly, so it's owned by the Toronto government, and it works better that way because if it was owned by a private company, they would set prices too high for low income people, so the low income people wouldn't ride the subway, and then high income people don't ride the subway anyway usually, so there would be no need for the service. So it has to be run by the government. Go Transit, same thing. Low income, medium income people. They're the people that ride it. So the prices are low, and that the prices are low because it's run by the government. If it was run by a private company, they'd set prices high, and it would be only used by high income people, even though they wouldn't use it, so it would not be used. So that's why it's run by the government. And then Meta, they effectively are a monopoly in social media, Instagram, Facebook, and others. And they are facing serious issues with that in terms of U.S. government cracking down on monopolies. So they've mostly monopolized social media. De Beers, they monopolized diamond production, and they set diamond prices at marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and this was anti-competitive. Amazon, they are anti-competitive in terms of e-commerce, and there's not a lot of competition. LCBO at one time was anti-competitive. They were the monopoly in liquor sales in Ontario. Walmart, they were one time very anti-competitive because they almost monopolized retail. Rogers Shaw, they tried to pull off a merger where they would effectively own most of the cable infrastructure in Canada, but thankfully the Canadian government stopped that acquisition, and hopefully they don't they don't merge in the future because it would be anti-competitive and they'd set prices too high for consumers, and it would not be competitive. I Alpha, yeah, I think it's just gonna be us today. Sorry about that. The I think Halloween people are kind of sleeping in. That's okay. How are you today? Morning. Yeah, I think I think people are it's and probably sleeping in. That's fine. It's Halloween. So monopolistic competition we'll go through. So we'll go through what the characteristics are of monopolistic competition. So monopolistic competition has a lot of sellers. So they have small market shares and limited control of the market price. They have differentiated products. So product attributes, service, location, brand names, packaging, and some control of the price. So um, so a good example of this is BlackBerry. At one point, I just read a book on BlackBerry. It's called BlackBerry Town. It's a great book on the story, and I connected with the author, and he agreed that he wants to speak in our class. Very smart guy, and yeah, Chuck Howlett, and he it'll be good to hear from him because BlackBerry was part of the monopolistically competitive market of cell phones. Because Apple, Samsung, BlackBerry, Nokia, HTC, all these companies were part of the cell phone industry. And it closely shows monopolistic competition. So there's no collusion. There's a large number of firms. So it restricts output and so there can't be restriction of output and setting prices. Like that just doesn't happen in monopolistic competition. And then actions by one firm will not trigger a response. So price cut by a single firm may result in an increase in sales. So monopolistic competition is easy entry and exit. So it's easy to enter or exit compared to oligopoly or monopoly. Then firms are small, so it's hard. Like there's no economies of scale. There's no capital requirements, and then perfect competition. Uh, compared to perfect competition, there are some costs in terms of advertising. So there's a lot of non-price competition in terms of advertising. So here the clothing industry is the highest monopolistic competitive market, and then plastic bag is second, bead industry is third, fixed products are fourth. So Herfindahl index measures the amount of competition. So then so firms will enter a profitable industry and exit an unprofitable one. So so companies will enter when there's profit, and then companies will exit when there's loss. So that's just what happens in the monopolistic competitive market. So in this case, companies would enter when there's profit, and in this case, when there's loss, companies will leave the market. So positive profits will continue if there's continuing and significant product differentiation. Entry is somewhat limited by the financial investment required to establish product differentiation. So firms constantly manage price, product, and advertising. So they do better when they have better product differentiation and better advertising. And then they do this through different types and styles and different brands and quantity. So the fast food industry is monopolistic competitive. So so in this case, higher minimum wage, there are companies in the fast food industry like McDonald's, they can pay for the higher minimum wage over like independent restaurants. So like yeah, any like McDonald's in this case, McDonald's could pay their workers more, and this would be easier than if an independent restaurant pays their workers more, because McDonald's is a bigger company and can absorb more wage increases than a small independent restaurant. So yeah, chain restaurants are capital intensive, so an increase in minimum wage does not affect them as much.